Welcome back, America. Another very smart man, our buddy Newt Gingrich, who used to sit back there as speaker and watch presidents speak. I'm sure this time it would have been very difficult. It was a grueling, exhausting speech, not for Biden, but for the rest of us. You know, Newt, it's been 3 days since he gave the speech. I think it'll go down in history, if it goes down at all, as the worst State of the Union speech in history. But I want to get a little beyond that. I watched this speech. It's very upsetting, very frustrating, the serial lies and distractions and all the rest. But I started really taking a measure of this man, Joe Biden. You know, he's been around a long time. We've been around a long time. We think we know who he is. But the extent at his core and his soul of who he really is, I thought came out big time during the course of that speech. When you watch that speech, surely in your mind you were thinking similarly, what am I dealing with here? What are we as a nation dealing with? What were your thoughts?
To have somebody who is such a vicious, dishonest liar standing in front of you and know that you can't get up and jump him, you can't hit him in the back of the head. And I thought Johnson, you know, he would not know, he would laugh at things that were absurd. So I want to give him some credit here. I wasn't surprised. I have for a long time concluded that Joe Biden is a dishonest, lying, corrupt person who has no regard for his own country, who is pathetic in his inability to protect America anywhere in the world, and who, frankly, I think is rapidly going to become maybe the second worst president in American history. And I think that it's just astonishing to watch him. But I thought the speech the other night was beyond the pale. I went back and read Harry Truman's 1948 State of the Union. It is patriotic, unifying, visionary. The comparison, because Truman's clearly their model, and Truman in September and October was very partisan. But in January and February, he was the president of the whole country. What we saw, I think, the other night was we don't have a commander-in-chief. We have a Democrat-in-chief. We don't have a president. We have a chairman of the Democratic National Committee. And I think it is a disgraceful performance.
And of course, he's celebrated in the Democrat Party media, but not by very many other people. Do you think this is a consequence of him and half a century of him? Or do you think, because he's so chameleon-like, that it's really the Democrat Party and the radical elements of the Democrat Party that are leading this direction, or is it him that's leading the party?
No, I mean, I think he's sort of evolved this way, but it's also that he's surrounded now. Think of this as the third Barack Obama term. He's surrounded by left-wingers. They have a worldview that is radically different than us. You know, you really have in this country today two alternative realities. You have a group of people who believe that if you bribe the Iranians and you abandon Israel and you accept, people can have 297 different sexual identities, etc., then you're a good person. They believe that. I mean, you have to at least give them credit that they are genuinely weird and that they are sincerely weird. Biden has decided that he's part of the weirdness and that therefore it has to be good because he's for it. But this is, in fact, probably the most corrupt man ever to be president. He's a man who is a serial liar. He's closer to the Sopranos than he is to a normal American president. They accomplished two things, I have to be in all honesty. They proved he could, in fact, speak energetically for over an hour and I thought pretty intelligently, drift out of the House chambers slowly, proving he had enough extra energy, enough ability to engage. So they got that out of the way. Second, they destroyed any effort to get him off the ticket. If you watch the number of Democrats jumping up yelling 4 more years, there's not going to be any effort to dump Joe Biden. So at one level, if I were Donald Trump, I'd feel this was a pretty good speech because he just locked down that he is going to be the Democratic nominee. And as the New York Times reported last Sunday, and what I thought was an amazing article, their chief analyst, Nate Cohen, said, people just don't like Biden. That's his biggest problem.
Well, what's to like? I mean, his personality is horrendous. What's to like? The way he speaks and the way he attacks people? Let me ask you this. You said he's the second worst president ever. Who's the first? I can think of Buchanan. I can think of Woodrow Wilson. Who would you say is the worst?
I think you have to say Buchanan because he allowed the South to seize all the federal arsenals, and he allowed the concept of secession to grow under his presidency. An aggressive, if you go back and look at how Andrew Jackson, a generation earlier, handled the idea of secession, and he was going to mobilize the army, and South Carolina backed down. Had we had an Andrew Jackson in the 1850s, we probably wouldn't have had a civil war.
Of course, the Democrats hate Andrew Jackson, too, even though he was a Democrat. Let me ask you this about Joe Biden. Joe Biden threw in with the worst racist segregationist senators imaginable. Eastland, Stennis, Talmadge, Byrd, when he came into the Senate. He was not just the young, sophomore coming into the Senate or junior coming into the freshman. He was a leader, and he wrote legislation, and he got Eastland to back it to oppose integration and so forth and so on. Now he walks around like he's the great hope. He's the savior of democracy. How dare you challenge him and challenge his viewpoints and so forth. How does he get away with this transition from one of the big-time segregationist racists 50 years ago to really pretending to be the great hope?
Well, first of all, remember that Delaware 50 years ago was a dramatically more conservative and more southern state. It was actually more sympathetic to Jesse Helms than it was to John Lewis. Second, you cannot overstate the importance of the elite news media. They're going to cover Biden. They're going to protect Biden. They're going to defend Biden. They hate Trump so deeply that no matter what Biden does, they're going to prop him up because he's the only hope they have of stopping Trump from getting to be president again. And the prospect of a Trump presidency is so terrifying if you are in the news media that anything you can do, no matter how big the lie, anything you can do counts. You may remember that in the 1930s, the New York Times won a Pulitzer Prize for a correspondent in Moscow who explicitly, deliberately lied about Stalin, refused to report on the famine that killed 10 million people in Ukraine, and was generally a despicable person. Got a Pulitzer Prize. Well, the same thing's going on here. This is comparable to the degree to which they lied about Castro and the degree to which they lied about Stalin. And all of the elite media has joined the New York Times in a conspiracy of dishonesty, trying to prop up Biden and, more importantly, trying to stop Donald Trump.
We'll be right back. Newt Gingrich, I'll raise it because nobody else will. What if the Democrats get what they want? What if President Trump is found guilty of one of these 91 bogus charges, and they can say he's a convicted felon, that these courts are so corrupt, they may not allow him to appeal in a timely way. Maybe they won't even stay the sentence. Are we to expect that 70 million Americans are going to tolerate that and just put up with it and be happy on Inauguration Day with Joe Biden? How is this going to play itself out, do you think?
Look, you're going to have turmoil either way. If Trump wins, you're going to get turmoil on the left. If Trump loses, you're going to get turmoil on the right. I mean, we're not headed towards a picnic right now. We're headed towards a huge cultural crisis between a totalitarian left and everybody else in America. The problem the left is facing is that with every passing week, it is more obvious that the justice system is corrupt. It's more obvious that the whole thing is rigged. And I think that builds a momentum for Trump that begins to be almost unassailable. And I think that it would be an enormously dangerous thing for them to move forward. And at some point, I have a hunch, I could be totally wrong, but at some point I have a hunch that the Attorney General is going to pull the plug and say, you really can't try somebody in the summer and fall of a presidential election year. It's not sustainable. And I think as it sinks in, you're going to see members of the House and Senate go crazy. You're going to see governors and attorney generals go crazy. They're all going to say, this is totally unsustainable and you can't do it. And one of the breakpoints, frankly, was the size of the fine that the totally illegitimate and dishonest left-wing judge levied in New York. All of a sudden, people looked up and said, that's crazy. And I think day by day, more Americans realize you have a system which is deeply, seriously corrupt at levels that we've never imagined.
I could be quite wrong, and I'll bet you $1. that the Attorney General doesn't intervene to stop a damn thing. Because if he's going to do it, he ought to do it now. He's got many opportunities to do it, and he's not taking any. I don't think he's going to play it right to the end of the wire. Here's the problem, and here's the reality. Despite all the media and the propaganda, and unfortunately this is considered counterintuitive when I believe it's intuitive. That is, if Donald Trump doesn't win, we are going to lose our justice system forever. We're going to lose these traditions, these practices, our constitutional system forever. And you're an expert on these things, a historian. What the radical left does, whether in our society or other societies, they project onto their opponents who they are and what they actually believe, and they use propaganda to push it. So it is they who want to destroy the electoral system. It is they who are more fascistic and Marxist, and that's why they project that and character assassinate Trump. Your final thoughts?
Well, that's exactly why the Supreme Court voted 9-0, that it was the Democrats in Colorado, not Trump, who were the threat to democracy. And it's no wonder that Joe Biden, in an unprecedented way, attacked the Supreme Court while they were sitting there in the State of the Union, unprecedented, because from the standpoint of the left, the Supreme Court may be the last bulwark of defending American liberty, and they are growing to just hate it.
That's such a profound point, very, very important, and we'll see how it goes down the road. They're threatening the court now. You better rule our way on immunity, and you better do this, and you better do that. They've threatened it with packing it. Roosevelt did. They do now. It's really quite terrible. They're attacking all these institutions, constitutional institutions, including the founders, while they're waving around the Constitution. Newt Gingrich, your national treasure, thank you, my friend, and God bless you, sir.
Good to be with you. Thank you.